A lot of people in the UK are excited about a new party of the left, but they've forgotten about the one we've got already.
And how well's the Green Party been doing the last several decades? Not very well. One MP, I believe. Yeah, they've had small gains, but they're not a realistic electoral force in terms of forming a government. I mean, they have the sort of benefit of not really having to seriously think about how they would implement their policies because they don't really have a realistic chance of getting in. So they can make all the promises they like and never actually going to be tested on them. That's before you even come down to some of those policies actually being quite misguided. I mean, you could have an entire manifesto based on green policy for the UK. The impact that we would make globally is minuscule. Okay, it is insignificant. If we did absolutely every single thing on the Green Manifesto, assuming those were even workable policies, it makes basically no difference to global warming and the overall environmental situation on the planet. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing things in that direction, of course, but yeah, that's just the reality of the situation. And I am not convinced that the Green Party is as authentically sort of progressive as we like to hope that they are. This was tested. There was a watershed moment a few years back, right, when Caroline Lucas had the chance to support Jeremy Corbyn being made de facto Prime Minister in a vote of confidence. So Jeremy Corbyn had managed to hack away at the Tory majority so severely that they basically couldn't govern. And a vote of confidence, technically, if it had gone Corbyn's way, he would have been made de facto Prime Minister with a minority government, okay? Caroline Lucas did not support Jeremy Corbyn in that vote of confidence. This is unforgivable. Absolutely ridiculous that she didn't back him on that. And in fact, she was a thorn in Corbyn's side on several other major issues as well. The thing that finally tanked Corbyn's vote in 2019 was an obsession over a second EU referendum that the Greens got behind. And of course, this was masterminded by Keir Starmer and his band of PLP saboteurs that could not stomach the thought of a Corbyn government. So they did everything that they could to destroy his chances electorally. And the one thing that actually managed to do that in the end wasn't the anti-Semitism smears. It wasn't any of the bullshit in the media. The polling for Labour was holding steady until that second EU referendum policy was passed at conference, backing Corbyn into a corner. And Caroline Lucas was also central in the push for that second referendum policy, which the North and the Midlands didn't want. So this was the navel-gazing, egotistical, blinkered policy agenda of a certain faction within Labour and on the left, is that, they'd lost the EU referendum, but they were so obsessed with wanting to do it over again, they managed to get it into the Labour manifesto for 2019, and it tanked Labour's vote, destroying our chances of the most progressive government in living memory. Now, I'm a democratic socialist, big fan of those manifestos, apart from that EU referendum policy, right? But what we have to recognise here is that the Labour movement and the Labour Party over the last 100-odd years did not grow into the force that it became, being a left-wing party, right? It was a working class party. There is no war but the class war, all right? And Labour was supported and voted for by a huge range of people that have views that could be said to be on the left and the right when it comes to social matters. Because these days, the conversation between left and right tends to get bogged down or be centered on, social issues, not economics, which is really what left versus right is all about. On the right, you've got capitalism. On the left, you've got socialism. On the extreme left, you've got communism, okay? So that's not really the conversation that we've been having over the last several decades. When we think about the friction between left and right, we think about other things like nationalism, or supposedly progressive social policy versus supposedly conservative social policies. But that has been obfuscated completely. That's a different topic. I'm not going to get into that right now. But the movement The only way we're going to get a revolution in this country and a genuine alternative to the current parties on offer is a working class movement, which is not partisan, which is not divisive, which does not cordon itself off into these little ideologically perfect groups where people in your little group agree with everything you say on every topic. This left versus right thing is a distraction. It's a creation of the establishment to keep the people fighting amongst themselves and to prevent us realizing the truth, which is that we all share a common oppressor, the 1%. You know, the 99% movement had a very logical and powerful idea at its core, and that is that we are all united by the oppression that we are under, that is maintained by a tiny number of people at the top of the economic tree. And unsurprisingly, the 99% encompasses all of the left and the right. You know, so the Labour Party in the Midlands and the North especially, right, had voters from that wide spectrum. And a lot of voters that went over to the Brexit Party were ex-Labour voters. So it is completely wrong to look at Reform UK and just assume that they are all these hard right ex-Conservative voters. That's not the case. A huge percentage of people that are now interested in reform and previously went over to UKIP and the Brexit Party were ex-Labour voters. And we ignore that at our peril. So that doesn't mean that the new party with Corbyn has to have right-wing policies or adopt the rhetoric of the Reform Party. No, it just means you've got to make your case for a fair economy in a way that can appeal to everybody. And don't be calling yourselves the Left Party. I can't believe Zara Sultana wants to literally call this thing the Left Party. Whether you like it or not, that term comes with it a lot of baggage, whether it's deserved or not, and will put off a huge percentage of the electorate by virtue of its name alone. So a few years ago, there was a study done in which when you present the policies that were in Corbyn's manifesto to people, but divorce those policies from association with Corbyn, the left or socialism, most people support those policies because they're just fair, equitable ideas, right? So maybe it's a little bit of optics going on there, but the fact is that those policies appeal to people, but it does matter how you present those ideas. So there is no war but the class war. A revolution will not come from the People's Front of Judea. Right? We need to have a class war focus, and that includes appealing to the entire working class on matters that affect everybody and can appeal to everybody. If they focus solely on just being a left-wing party, I'm afraid it's not going to have the electoral impact that it could if it had that broader appeal.